Good morning, good morning. I kind of see some eyes in there. I have to work all day today, Ja. I'm really sorry. I know you hate that, but I'm going to hop in the shower and we're going to go out for a little walk. See what kind of excitement you can get into your little bones before I go. And then because of the parking situation, you can't park anywhere around here till 10 p.m. And where I'm going has street cleaning as well, so it's going to be tough to park. I'm just going to walk there. It's about a 40-minute walk. I'm just going to go ahead and walk to work today. Say goodbye to those eyes, guys. Sun's out, Jaws out, Jordan's out, and we're having fun. Well, I mean, he's peeing, so I guess that's fun for one of us. Oh, I got to go to work here. I told you guys in yesterday's vlog, or if you didn't get to see it, basically I have to work all day today, and instead of just sitting down at the end of the night and giving you a 10-minute talk just so that I put out some sort of content, which some days I'm sure I'll have to, but I'm so early on in the vlogging process that, I mean, I'm under a year. I try not to do stuff like that. I really want to give you guys good content because I want to be where I'll be in 5 years, but I want to be there in like 2 years. So my goal is to try and bring great content as often as I can. Today is no exception. Since I knew I was working, well, I was watching MAMAS Family recently, the last 2 days, and man, I got obsessed with it. And when I watched the opening shot, I'm like, that looks like a real house. That doesn't look like a set house. And looked up the address, and boom, that's where I went yesterday. And I have a ton of trivia and information about it, so have fun today, guys. It's not always here. I don't know where that came from. I don't normally plan out our vlogs in advance. I mean, I don't like, I usually kind of wake up the day of or the night before. I go, what am I going to do tomorrow? But this week, well, over the weekend, I just decided, hey, let's change it up. I'm actually going to plan out all the places I'm going all week next week, unless something changes. So, see how this goes. This is the first time that I'm going to make a conscious effort to put together a really good week. And when I knew that I was going to be doing the Christmas parade for the start of the week, which would have been like Sunday, Monday, I just thought, well, heck, I know that'll be like interesting to watch. Let's try and put together just something that I'd be proud of for like a great week. And so I hope you guys enjoy everything I'm going to go see this week. Little tip from me to you. You might want to look up an ache in every steak that's going to come into play this week. And that one is for my stepdad. He and I used to watch that a lot together. And found out the address. We're going. Haha! A little bit of history there. Just a little bit of a warning for you. Big Brother is real. There it is, there it is. A little nugget of interest, this park over here. About 5 years ago, my friend James and I had this obsession for about 6 months where we went and bought Louisville Slugger baseball bats and hard baseballs, and we would go to any park we could find and pitch to each other and swing for the fences. And one day, this was a bad idea because I was in there at the backstop. James was pitching to me, and I socked one so hard I thought it was going to come out into this street where we're at, and it actually ended up hitting that fence right there about 3/4 of the way up, and we immediately grabbed our stuff and left. Not smart. Not the smartest thing I've ever done. The shoes on the wire mean something, and I don't know what it is. I think it's like world peace or something. I don't get it. Well, gang, I'm here on Theater Row, and this is where we call it an 8-hour break from seeing each other. Hope you guys enjoy the vlog. I gotta go to work. So, the time machine takes us to yesterday in South Pasadena. Holes in this neighborhood have these on there. There's got to be a significance or some story that I don't know. If you know, post below and tell me what it is. Whoa. Dinosaur farm. Yikes. Yeah, I don't know. They're all up and down this street. We're heading somewhere today that I've been a fan of, God, for as long as I can remember. Cool. One of those little free libraries. Just kind of off to the side here as I'm walking by. That's right. The house from Mama's family. That opening shot was a sweeping crane that would have came down right here, right in front of old Mama's, Thelma Harper's house. We would have seen Thelma walking right down this front walkway and come out and grab the paper right there. And she would have turned around and went back in, and that would have been the opening shot for Mama's family. For the theme anyway, the credits. Mama's family's got such a weird history because if you don't know, a lot of it all basically starts with Carol Burnett. Carol Burnett was signed to a contract with a studio, and they never really had found a place for her. She was doing like on variety shows and stuff, but she actually had this weird clause in her contract that most people didn't ever enact, that said that she could force them to make a show for her. And right at the end of her clause, she decided to force that issue, and they had to make a Carol Burnett show. Because of that, she got to cast all of her friends and people that she absolutely loved. And Harvey Korman was one of them, Tim Conway was one of them, and of course Vicki Lawrence. So Mama's family actually started there. Carol Burnett, it was a sketch written for Carol Burnett to play Mama, and she actually wanted Vicki to play Mama because she liked Eunice's part so much. So it became a pretty popular segment on the Carol Burnett show, and they made a movie out of it, and that was pretty successful. And so they approached Vicki Lawrence about making a TV show, and she didn't want to do it for many reasons. For one, she was pretty young. She was in her early 30s, and she didn't want to play an old woman all the time. And two, she didn't want to leave the cast of the Carol Burnett show. She didn't want to leave Carol, and she didn't want to leave Harvey Korman. And because of that loyalty, Carol actually loved Vicki even more. But originally, it was Carol Burnett's husband who approached her to do it. He was a producer of the Carol Burnett show and eventually became the producer of Mama's Family. Now, basically how it happened was when Carol and her husband were going to get a divorce. Well, it's actually before that. Carol went to Vicki and convinced her to do the show. And that's actually how it started. And Carol would make random appearances for the first 2 seasons until she was divorcing her husband. Then she no longer made any appearances. Also on the first 2 seasons, Betty White was on the show. She played Mama's daughter. And Rue McClanahan was also on it, and she played Thelma's sister. So, and it's weird because the story of Mama's Family is, it's kind of like, it's weird. They had the show for 2 seasons, and then it didn't do well. So they moved it to syndication, and then once it was off the network, it actually did really well, and ended up lasting a total of 6 seasons. It went from 83 until 1990. And when it started, Vicki Lawrence was 33. She played Mama from like 33 till she was 40. And what's kind of crazy about that is that Carol Burnett played her daughter, Betty White played her daughter, and Ken Berry played Vinton. And all 3 of them were 15 to 16 years older than her. So the show actually, once it got into syndication, it became a huge hit. And since it had been off for a short time, they had to write, once season 3 came back in, they had to write Betty White and Rue McClanahan out of the show because, ta-da, Golden Girls came into play. They were starring on Golden Girls, so they actually wrote her sister Rue McClanahan's part out of the show by Mama secretly holding back from everybody that she had choked on a toothpick in the bathroom at the Bigger Jigger, which is the bar that Vinton always would hang out at. Pretty crazy stories about this place. I mean, or about this show anyway. Pretty crazy. I mean, it's just unbelievable some of the things that they were able to do in this show. And they had a laugh track that was so loud you couldn't help but laugh. And I mean, just everything about this show was deemed for success. Ken Berry was funny, Vicki Lawrence was funny, everybody in the cast was really funny, and in fact, the woman Dorothy Lehman, who they picked to play Naomi, who eventually marries Vint, they saw her on All My Children, and they liked her so much that Carol Burnett influenced her to be cast, and she would fly back and forth doing All My Children and filming the show until finally she ended up choosing Mama's Family over All My Children. And they said that during the entire filming of the show, the length of the show, she actually in real life had a crush on Vinton. Go figure. So yeah, the reason this show ended up going off the air was literally just Vicki Lawrence got tired of playing it. And they, even though this was used for the opening shot, they actually did film some episodes here. A friend of mine once told me, a pretty funny comedian, his name's David Taylor, he writes for a few TV shows, and he once taught me, he said, every scenario in a sitcom and in life has been played out in Mama's Family. And when I was trying to remember what his quote was exactly, I texted him yesterday, and he reminded me of a great episode, because what he said was, he said, I still stand by that statement. He said, if you go back and rewatch the time that, he said, this Trump election reminds me of the time that Mama ended up running for mayor and ends up giving out all these inflated promises, and before she realizes that how hard of a job being the mayor actually is. And I went back and rewatched that episode, and they actually did that here on location. There's you'll see Mama being interviewed by the reporter right here in the front, and then she turns around to take her like bonnet thing off and fix her hair and everything. But yeah, that was filmed here, and she ends up running while she's standing here in that episode. She ends up running kind of down this sidewalk. But what also is historical about this place is this was also used in the movie Halloween. And if you remember the scene where the girls are walking down that sidewalk and Michael Myers pops out behind the bushes, right there are the bushes.
Creep. He wants to take you out tonight.
And that's when they round the corner and she says, "Hey Lori, I think he wants a date with you." Boom. That's where that would have happened. Yeah, what an absolutely classic show. I mean, it had, like I said, it had everything going for it. In the early seasons, it had Carol Burnett and Harvey Korman both making appearances. Harvey Korman actually directed some of the episodes in the first 2 seasons. And ironically, I was thinking, like, the kind of shows that I love, I've always loved kind of crazy humor and slapstick and off the wall, but still believable. And one of the first things that this show kind of reminded me of was Three's Company. And then when I looked into it, the director of Three's Company also directed Mama's Family. Isn't that crazy? And Harvey Korman actually, in a lot in the early 2 seasons, he would start the show. He would be sitting in like a smoking jacket in an armchair, and his name was Alistair Quince. There were a few things about the show you never really get an explanation for. Like when Bubba gets released from prison at the start of season 3, that's like the first time we see him. or actually not prison, but like a child reform school. That's when we find out that Eunice and Ed have moved to Florida, and he's not allowed to leave the state. So that was one of the weird ways they got rid of them. And then when they brought season 3 back in, and when the show went into syndication, they got rid of the 2 kids, and one of the kids was named Vinton Jr. And at the end of the entire series, Naomi and Vinton are expecting a baby, and Vinton keeps saying he wants to call the baby Vinton Jr., and it actually ends up being a girl in the very last episode. That I think they name her Tiffany or something like that. Let's just leave on that iconic image of Thelma Harper's house. Well, one of the things I kind of forgot to tell you, that even though it's a little tidbit, I still wanted to tell you, was that the theme song, even though it's instrumental, it originally had lyrics, and Vicki Lawrence had written the lyrics, who played Mama, and when it all came down to it, they just decided they liked a version without lyrics better, so they ended up losing it. But I think one of the things that I always loved about Mama's Family so much was that my grandmother, who's passed away now, was the sweetest, nicest person you would ever meet. I mean, almost like Rose from the Golden Girls. But when she would go visit her mom, who we called Granny, our Granny, she was like in her 90s and wanted to be independent, so she had a trailer about 2 towns away. And 2 or 3 times a week, my grandma would go up and visit her and clean her house. And Granny would just have this way of just nitpicking everything to death. And if there was anything in the news or in the tabloids, she was criticizing it. And my grandma always say she had never had anything nice to say about anybody. And a couple of times I went up with my grandma to Granny's house, and I would watch how they interacted. And Thelma Harper is always who my grandma reminded me of when she'd go to Granny's house. She would go from being the nicest, sweetest person to just being this person who, like, had the shortest fuse. That one little thing would just have her going like, let's get this done so I can get out of here. So that was just one of those things, if you ever wonder, like, why I like some of the stuff. A lot of, like liking the Golden Girls and liking Mama's Family is because it reminds me of my grandma so much. There you go, Corey Bobeck. You wanted to know where my guitar is? It's always sitting right there. That's the very first guitar I ever bought. Signed by Robert Pollard. If you don't know who Robert Pollard is, look up the name. He's my favorite songwriter of all time. Well, I'm on lunch. And one thing you guys might find a little entertaining was that while I was on set at Hollywood Studios, DiCaprio's filming a commercial here, so he's walked by me a couple of times in his suit. Well, that's where the workday is today, folks. I'm on lunch, and you guys might find this entertaining. Leonardo DiCaprio's on this lot today filming a commercial, and I've walked past him a few times. Fortunately, they made me check my phone in when I got to the studio, so I couldn't take any pictures or anything like that, but I did see him. He's filming a commercial. I'm trying to make a connection here at the studio so I can see if they'll let me come on here and vlog. Like, not wander the studios, but maybe wander the lot and just show the outside of the buildings and tell what was filmed here, because the first season of I Love Lucy was filmed here on stage 2. A lot of the Marx Brothers movies were filmed on stage 5. George and Gracie Burns show, George Burns, Gracie Allen, that was filmed here. Mr. Ed was filmed here. Lots of stuff, lots of movies, lots of commercials. Right now, At Midnight's filmed here, and various other things, but yeah, I'm trying to make a connection so I can wander the lot and tell you guys some stories. Alright, well, I'm done! That clock up there reminds me of the famous Harold Lloyd short, which is, if you guys have never seen it, where he's hanging from the clock. I recently watched a documentary on stuntmen in, like, the silent movie era, and they were basically saying in the early days there was no stuntman. They'd literally just find an extra on set and say, like, hey, do you want to do this for an extra $10? And it'd be like something horrible that nobody wanted to do, and then eventually people that were involved in the circus and people became trained stuntmen. But how they said they did that was because they didn't have the effects. That was kind of the days before you could cheat things with, like, a painted backdrop and everything. And how he said they did it was some of the scenes they actually did have to do with somebody climbing up the side of the building and everything. But then when they got to the scenes where he's hanging off the clock, what it really was they built a secondary unit up on top of the roof of the building so that they would have the same appearance and background of the city behind them, but that he would actually only be hanging like 6 feet off of a built platform that was designed for the set. So when I get home, I'll look and see what the name of that was. Because it's so worth watching if you're into silent movies or anything like that. So interesting. I mean, you could probably actually even type in silent movies, stuntman or whatever, and it was like an episodic series. Really good. If I find the link, I'll add the link to the little notes below. If you want to check out the Harold Lloyd short silent film, it's called Safety First. It's like a whole fort. Well, it looks like they're filming some sort of little Christmas movie, some deal over here at the manor. I think that's probably as good of way to end the night as any. Love you all, and have a great night, guys. Do something great tomorrow. Log over.